The massive alien ships appeared over Earth without warning, their dark hulls blocking out the sun in 12 major cities. Ambassador Lee Hanna stood at the window of the United Nations building in New York, watching the shadow of the enormous vessel creep across Central Park. People below moved like ants, some running in panic, others standing frozen as they stared up at the impossible sight. "They've been watching us for 3 years," General Park Junho said quietly behind her. His voice was steady, but Hannah could hear the tension underneath. "Our satellites detected their scout ships, but we thought we had more time." Anna turned. From the window, the emergency assembly hall buzzed with voices in dozens of languages as world leaders argued through their translators. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What did the aliens want? The answer came at exactly noon, when every screen on Earth flickered and showed the same image. The alien was tall, maybe 9 feet, with smooth gray skin and large black eyes that seemed to look directly at each viewer. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, Chinese, Spanish, and every other major language simultaneously. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am First Speaker Veltar of the Galactic Hegemony. We have observed your species for some time and have decided to offer you a choice." Park moved closer to Hannah. "Here it comes," he whispered. "Your technological advancement has been rapid, too rapid for a species of your ... temperament. We have seen what happens when aggressive civilizations gain access to advanced weaponry. The galaxy has rules, and we enforce them." The alien's voice remained calm, almost bored, as if it had given this speech many times before. "We offer you membership in the hegemony. You will accept our guidance in technology, warfare, and expansion. Your aggressive tendencies will be redirected toward productive purposes. In return, you will have protection, trade opportunities, and a place in galactic civilization." Anna felt her hands clench into fists. The way the alien said guidance made it sound like chains. "The alternative is pacification. We have found that most species choose membership once they understand the benefits. 47 civilizations have already joined us willingly." Dr. Kim Minho, Earth's top expert on the alien signals they had been intercepting, leaned forward. In his seat, he had been studying their communications for years, trying to understand their culture. Now his face was pale. "You have 30 Earth days to decide. We'll wait for your answer." The transmission ended, leaving the assembly hall. In stunned silence, then everyone started talking at once. "We need to consider this carefully," said President Chenwei of the Pacific Alliance. "They clearly have superior technology." "Consider what?" snapped President Choi Yuna. "They're offering us slavery with better benefits." General Park stepped to the front of the room. "May I remind everyone that we've been preparing for this possibility since we first detected their presence? Operation Deep Shield has been active for 2 years. Several leaders looked confused. Deep Shield was classified. Above their level, Dr. Kim stood up slowly. "I've been analyzing their communication patterns and cultural references. When they say pacification, they don't mean occupation. They mean extinction. The 47 species they mentioned as willing members, I think they joined after seeing what happened to the ones who refused." The room fell quiet again. "Do we know that?" asked the Brazilian representative. "Because in 3 years of monitoring their communications, never detected signals from any of those 47 homeworlds. Only from hegemony administrative centers. The species exist, but not on their original planets." Hannah walked to the center of the room. As Earth's primary diplomat, the burden of response fell on her shoulders, but she already knew what her answer would be. "They made one mistake," she said quietly. "They think we're like the others. They think if they show us their big ships and make their threats, we'll roll over like good little primitives." She looked around the room at faces representing every nation, every culture, every people who had ever called Earth home. "But we're not like the others. We're the species that fought saber-toothed tigers with pointed sticks. We're the species that sailed into unknown oceans because we wanted to see. What was on the other side? We're the species that split the atom and then immediately figured out how to make it into a weapon." Park nodded grimly. "The Deep Shield installations are ready. We may not have their technology, but we have something they don't expect." "What's that?" asked President Choi. "We have nothing left to lose," Hannah replied. "They're asking us to choose. between freedom and survival. But they don't understand, for humans, there's no difference between those two things. She turned back to the window where the alien ship still cast its shadow over the city. Somewhere up there, the aliens were waiting for humanity's surrender, confident that they had made their superiority clear. They had no idea what they had just challenged. Call the vote, Hannah said. Let's show them what happens when you corner the descendants of Earth's apex predators. The shadow of the alien ship seemed to grow darker, but Hannah smiled. They could have had peace, but they chose to threaten humanity instead. That was their first and last mistake. The vote took place 3 days later in a bunker deep beneath Geneva. Every world leader sat around a circular table while their aides monitored communication channels for any sign that the aliens were listening. Dr. Kim Minho had assured them the bunker was shielded, but nobody felt completely safe anymore. President Choi Yuna spoke first. Before we vote, I need to know exactly what we're choosing. General Park, tell us about Deep Shield. Park stood and activated a holographic display that showed the solar system. Red dots appeared throughout the asteroid belt, around the moon, and in orbit around Mars. For the past 5 years, we've been building these installations under the cover of mining operations and research stations. The aliens think they're looking at a primitive species that just learned to leave their planet. They have no idea we've been militarizing our entire solar system. The dots on the display pulsed, showing weapon ranges that covered every approach to Earth. Each installation is designed to look like civilian infrastructure until activated. The lunar research bases are actually missile silos. The asteroid mining ships are weapons platforms. Even the space stations around Mars have been fitted with railguns. Admiral Seo Doyan added, "We estimate their fleet has about 200 ships. We have over 3,000 hidden weapons platforms. The question isn't whether we can hurt them, it's whether we can survive what comes after." Dr. Kim pulled up his analysis of the alien communications. "I've been studying every signal we've intercepted. The hegemony has a pattern. They arrive, make their offer, and give exactly 30 days. If the answer is yes, the species becomes a client state. If the answer is no, ... double quotes, the signals from that system stop within a week. Complete extinction," asked the Brazilian representative. "That's what the evidence suggests. But here's what's interesting. They've never faced a species that was ready for them. Every civilization they've contacted was still confined to their home planet. We're the first they've encountered that already had significant space infrastructure." Colonel Bae Hoon Woo, head of Earth's new Space Marines, leaned forward. "There's something else. Our deep space monitoring stations detected other ships hanging back beyond Neptune. This isn't their full fleet, it's just their intimidation force. They're used to civilizations surrendering at the first show of power." The room was quiet for a long moment. Everyone understood what they were really voting on, not just resistance, but the potential end of human civilization. "I have a question," said President Chen Wei. "What if we're wrong? What if submission really does mean survival for our species?" Hannah looked at him steadily. "Then our children will grow up as slaves. They'll work in alien mines, serve alien masters, and forget they were ever free. Is that survival?" She stood and walked to the display showing Earth. "I've spent my career studying human history. Every great civilization that chose submission over resistance eventually disappeared. The ones that fought, even when they lost, left something behind. Their ideas, their culture, their refusal to accept defeat." Dr. Kim added quietly, "There's another factor. In all my analysis of their communications, I've never seen them mention negotiation after the 30-day period. No prisoner exchanges, no peace treaties, no surrender terms. They don't seem to have concepts for anything between total submission and total destruction." "Which means?" asked Admiral Seo. "Which means if we say no, they'll try to kill us all. But if we say yes, we die anyway, just more slowly." General Park activated another display. "Operation Deep Shield has a second phase. If they come at us directly, we hurt them badly enough that they think twice about attacking other worlds. But if they retreat to regroup, we don't wait for them to come back." The display showed projected human expansion routes throughout the galaxy. Not exploration routes, attack routes. We take the fight to them, Park continued. We've been intercepting their communications long enough to know where their supply bases are, which worlds support their fleet, how their command structure works. They want a war, we give them a war like they've never seen. Colonel Bay smiled. Grimly, humans don't just defend. We hunt. The vote was called at exactly noon, Geneva time. Each representative stood and spoke their nation's choice. The words were different in different languages, but the meaning was the same. No, no, no. When the last vote was counted, the result was unanimous. Admiral Essio immediately began the activation sequence for Deep Shield. Cross. The solar system, mining equipment, transformed into weapons platforms. Research stations revealed hidden missile batteries. Civilian ships powered up military-grade systems that had been disguised as cargo holds. Hannah walked to the communication array that would send their response to the alien fleet. The message was simple, but she knew it would change everything. This is Ambassador Lee Hannah speaking for the people of Earth? Our answer is no. We will not submit to your authority. We will not accept your limitations. We choose freedom. She paused, looking at the faces of her fellow humans around the room. You could have approached us as equals. You could have offered us friendship. Instead of chains, you could have had peace with humanity. Instead, you chose to threaten us. That was your mistake. The transmission ended, and within minutes, the alien fleet began moving toward Earth, but deep in space. Human weapons platforms were already calculating firing solutions. The war for humanity's freedom was about to begin. The hegemony fleet moved through space like a line of metal sharks, their massive ships gleaming in the distant sunlight. First speaker Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen.
Oh, yes.
In 300 years of conquest, he had never seen a species refuse their generous offer. Primitive fools, muttered his tactical officer. Our largest ships are barely the size of our fighters. Veltar nodded. The humans had shown him their pathetic fleet during the negotiation period, a few dozen vessels that looked like they were held together with metal patches and hope. It would be over in minutes. But as the hegemony ships crossed the asteroid belt, space itself seemed to wake up. Captain Yoon Ji-won floated in her fighter cockpit, watching the alien fleet approach. Through her helmet display, around her, hidden throughout the asteroid field, 300 other human pilots waited for the signal. Their ships were small and ugly compared to the sleek alien vessels, but they had something the aliens didn't expect. Remember, she broadcast? On the secured channel, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to show them what happens when you threaten a species that turned warfare into an art form. The first surprise came when the asteroids themselves opened fire. What the aliens had dismissed as floating rocks revealed themselves as weapons platforms, built inside hollowed-out asteroids and powered by fusion reactors. Railguns and missile launchers emerged from camouflaged hatches, targeting the alien ships with precision strikes. Impossible, Veltar hissed as his ship shook under the impact. The scan showed no military installations. His tactical officer's face had gone pale. Sir, we're detecting energy signatures throughout the belt. Hundreds of them. They've weaponized the entire asteroid field. But that was only the beginning. As the alien fleet tried to reorganize, human fighters swarmed out from their hiding places. They didn't attack like any military force the hegemony had ever faced. Instead of trying to disable enemy ships, they went straight for the reactor cores, instead of retreating when damaged. They accelerated toward their targets. Commander Lim Shung-ho's fighter had lost half its hull to alien fire, but his engines still worked. Through his cracked helmet visor, he could see the massive alien cruiser ahead of him, its weapons charging for another salvo that would kill dozens of his fellow pilots. Control, this is Sung-ho. My bird's done, but I've got one shot left. Negative. Commander, return to base for repairs. Sung-ho smiled and switched off his radio. He pointed his dying fighter at the alien ship's reactor section and pushed the throttle to maximum. His last transmission went out on all frequencies, alien and human alike. Tell your people we were the species that said no. The explosion took out the cruiser and 3 smaller escort ships. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human pilots turned their damaged fighters into guided missiles. When they ran out of conventional weapons, they used nuclear mines as ramming devices. When their ships were destroyed, the pilots activated personal fusion charges that had been hidden in their flight suits. First speaker Veltar watched his tactical display in growing horror. Each human kill cost them dearly, but they seemed to consider mutual destruction an acceptable outcome. His fleet was designed to intimidate primitive species into surrender, not fight an enemy that treated death as just another weapon. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can destroy theirs," reported his tactical officer. "And they're not fighting. To disable their fighting to kill, the human attacks weren't random either. They targeted command ships, communication arrays, and fuel supplies with surgical precision. Somehow, they knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage." Dr. Onsora watched the battle from her command bunker on the moon. The Pandora protocol was working perfectly. Years of intercepted alien communications had given Earth complete intelligence on hegemony ship designs, tactics, and command structures. Every human pilot knew exactly which parts of the alien ships to target for maximum effect. "Phase 2 is ready," she reported to Admiral Seo. "The moment they try to retreat, we activate the hunter-killer squadrons." The tide turned when Captain Yoon led her remaining fighters in a coordinated strike against the alien flagship. Her squadron had been reduced from 50 ships to 12. But those 12 pilots flew like they had nothing left to lose, because they didn't. All fighters, final approach. Remember, we're not defending Earth today. We're teaching the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. The alien point defense systems filled space with energy beams, but the human fighters kept coming. They flew through the defensive fire like it was rain, their small ships dancing between the massive alien weapons. Yoon's fighter took a direct hit that melted half her wing, but she kept flying. Her target was the flagship's main reactor, and she had enough momentum to reach it even. If her engines failed, she didn't need her engines. The explosion that followed lit up the entire battlefield. The hegemony flagship broke apart in a chain reaction that took 4 escort vessels with it. First, Speaker Veltar found himself floating in an escape pod, watching his once mighty fleet retreat in disorder. Half his ships were gone, and the rest were damaged. But worse than the losses was the realization that had settled over his entire force. The humans weren't fighting a defensive war, they were hunting. And for the first time in hegemony history, Veltar understood what it felt like to be prey. The hegemony survivors limped back to their forward base at Proxima Station, expecting to regroup and plan their next attack. What they found instead was wreckage floating in space and no response to their emergency signals. The station was gone, reduced to twisted metal and frozen atmosphere. First speaker Veltar stared at the destruction through his ship's viewport. "How is this possible? The humans don't have faster-than-light travel," its communications officer looked up from her console, her face pale with fear. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the sector. Supply convoys missing, patrol ships overdue. 3 mining colonies have gone silent in the past week." Veltar felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Show me the pattern." The tactical display lit up with red markers showing lost assets across 100 light-years of space. The attacks weren't random. They followed the hegemony's supply routes and communication networks with surgical precision. "They're not defending their home system," Veltar whispered. "They're hunting us." Colonel Baehoon Woo floated in zero gravity aboard his stealth ship, watching the hegemony fuel depot through his helmet display. The alien facility orbited a gas giant 30 light-years from Earth, completely undefended because it was supposed to be secret. But humans had been listening to alien communications for years. They knew where every hegemony base was located, what each one supplied, and which ones were critical to the war effort. "Team Alpha, confirm your position," Bay whispered. Into his come. "In position, Colonel." Fusion charges placed on the main fuel tanks. "Team Beta status? Ready to disable their communications array? They won't be able to call for help." Bay smiled inside his helmet. The hegemony thought they were fighting a military force. They had no idea they were being hunted by an entire species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Execute in 3.2.1. The fuel depot disappeared in a chain of explosions that lit up the gas giant's rings. Any hegemony ships in the area would now have to return to their home systems to refuel. A journey that would take weeks and leave them vulnerable to more human attacks. But the physical destruction was only part of the plan, hidden in the wreckage. Were recording devices that would broadcast the attack to any hegemony ship that came to investigate. The aliens would see exactly how their secret base had been destroyed by humans, who weren't supposed to exist in their territory. Fear was a weapon, and humans had learned to use it well. Dr. Onsora coordinated the campaign from her hidden base in the asteroid belt. The Pandora Protocol had evolved beyond simple intelligence gathering. Now it was a weapon that targeted each alien species' deepest fears and cultural weaknesses. The Valkyrie are afraid of biological contamination, she reported to the strike team leaders. Hit their agricultural worlds with harmless bacteria that will make their crops glow in the dark. They'll think it's a plague and evacuate entire planets. The Zephyrians communicate through subsonic frequencies, she continued. Jam their communications with recordings of human war songs. They'll think we're everywhere at once. Each hegemony species received personalized psychological warfare designed to exploit their specific vulnerabilities. The humans had studied their enemies for years, learning their languages, their cultures, and their fears. Now, those fears were coming true. Captain Park. Sojin's hunter-killer squadron materialized out of hyperspace near a hegemony troop transport. The alien ship was massive, carrying reinforcements to shore up their crumbling defenses. But it was also slow and poorly armed. Remember the rules? Park broadcast to her pilots. We're not here to destroy the ship. We're here to send a message. Human fighters swarmed the transport, disabling its weapons and engines with surgical precision. Then they did something the hegemony had never encountered in 3 centuries of conquest. They boarded the enemy vessel. The alien troops inside found themselves facing humans in powered armor who moved like predators through the ship's corridors. But the humans weren't there to kill everyone. They had a more specific purpose. Where are your officers? Park demanded of a captured alien soldier. Her voice translated through her suit speakers. The terrified creature pointed toward the command deck with one of its 4 arms. 20 minutes later, the human boarding party returned to their fighters, leaving the transport intact, but fundamentally changed. The alien crew was unharmed, but they had watched their officers disappear into human custody. They had seen their communications equipment modified to broadcast human messages. They had learned that humans could appear anywhere, anytime, and take whoever they wanted. The transport limped back to hegemony. Space-carrying survivors who spread the word, humans didn't just attack ships and bases. They hunted specific individuals. Within weeks, hegemony commanders began requesting transfers away from the front lines. Supply officers abandoned their posts. Even the alien civilians on worlds far from the fighting started demanding protection from the human ghosts that could strike anywhere. First, Speaker Veltar received the reports in his heavily defended command bunker, but even underground he didn't feel safe. The humans had demonstrated they could penetrate any defense, reach any target, and strike without warning. How many species have we lost contact with? 17 of our member races have withdrawn their fleets and returned to their home systems. They say they're not equipped to fight an enemy that treats the entire galaxy as a hunting ground. Veltar stared at the tactical display showing human attacks across hundreds of star systems. The aliens had thought they were conducting a simple pacification campaign against a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened predators who hunted among the stars. The surrender message reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. Appeared on every human communication channel, his once proud bearing now broken by months of relentless hunting. Behind him, the hegemony capital world burned in the distance, its great towers reduced to smoking ruins. The Galactic Hegemony formally requests cessation of hostilities, he said, his translated words carrying the weight of absolute defeat. We are prepared to discuss terms. General Minje stood in the command center of the human flagship as it approached the alien capital. Around him, his officers monitored the feeds from 47 different star systems where former hegemony slaves were rising up against their overseers. The rebellion had spread faster than anyone expected. "Sir, we're receiving surrender broadcasts from 12 more hegemony fleets," reported his communications officer. "They're requesting safe passage back to their home systems." Minje nodded but kept his eyes on the tactical display. The war wasn't really over until the last alien understood what had happened here. Not just defeat transformation. Grant them passage, but make sure they carry our message to every world in their territories. Any species that tries to rebuild, the hegemony will face the same fate. The human fleet entered orbit around the alien capital with ceremonial precision. These weren't the desperate fighters who had defended Earth 18 months ago. These were the ships of a species that had rewritten the rules of galactic civilization through sheer determination and superior tactics. Ambassador Lee Hanna walked through the ruins of the hegemony's great council chamber, her boots echoing on broken marble. Veltar waited for her at what remained of his throne, flanked by representatives of the 47 species that had once served the alien empire. But now those representatives looked to the humans with something between gratitude and awe. "Could have simply destroyed us," Veltar said quietly. "Why did you spare our civilians?" Hannah looked around the chamber at the gathered aliens. Some cowered in fear, others watched her with curious eyes, but all of them understood they were witnessing the birth of a new galactic order. "Because we're not conquerors," she replied. "We're liberators. Your empire fell because it was built on oppression. We're here to make sure it never rises again." She turned to address the representatives of the freed species. "Each of your worlds will receive protection and support as you rebuild your independence. Human patrol ships will monitor your space to ensure no one tries to reconquer you. But understand this, we will not rule you. We will simply make sure no one else does either." A representative from one of the former slave species, a small reptilian creature with bright orange scales, stepped forward hesitantly. "What do you want in return for this protection?" Hannah smiled. "Freedom isn't something you pay for, it's something you defend." Colonel Baehoon Woo supervised the destruction of the hegemony's weapons factories on their industrial worlds. But the humans weren't simply smashing everything, they were being selective. Military production facilities were dismantled, but civilian infrastructure remained intact. The message was clear. The humans could destroy whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, but they chose restraint. "Strip out the weapon manufacturing equipment, but leave the rest," he ordered his demolition. Teams. These people need to rebuild their societies, not starve in the ruins. The work proceeded under the watchful eyes of the former slaves, who had never seen conquerors show such consideration for the conquered. Word spread throughout the galaxy. Humans destroyed empires, not civilizations, Dr. Kim Min-ho established. The first human monitoring station in the former hegemony core worlds, the facility looked innocent enough, a research base dedicated to studying galactic communications. But every species in the region understood its true purpose. The humans were watching, listening, and ready to respond to any threat to galactic peace. "How long do we maintain the watch?" asked his deputy, Dr. Yoon Sira. Kim looked out at the starfield where human patrol ships moved on their endless circuits. "Forever, if necessary. Freedom requires eternal vigilance, and we've proven we're very good at vigilance." The new galactic order took shape quickly. The 47 liberated species formed loose confederations based on mutual cooperation rather than dominance. Trade resumed, but now it was voluntary exchange between equals rather than tribute to an empire. Exploration continued, but as scientific endeavor rather than conquest, and throughout it all, human ships patrolled the space lanes like galactic police, their very presence a reminder of what happened to those who sought to dominate others. Hannah stood on the observation deck of Earth's first permanent embassy ship, watching a former hegemony world celebrate its Independence Day. Children of a dozen different species played together in the streets below while their parents worked to rebuild their society. "Do you think it will last?" asked General Park, who had joined her for the ceremony. "The peace? Maybe, Maybe not, but the lesson will last forever. Every species in the galaxy now knows there's a price for trying to build an empire. They know that somewhere out there, humans are watching and waiting. She paused, thinking of all the battles fought and lives lost to reach this moment. We didn't want to be galactic peacekeepers. We just wanted to be left alone. But when they forced us to choose between freedom and survival, they created something new, a species that will never let anyone else face that choice again. In the darkness between stars, human patrol ships continued their silent vigil, ensuring that peace remained the only option for any civilization wise enough to choose it. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Freedom was not negotiable, and humanity was its eternal guardian.